Hi guys, I'm recording this on June 3rd, 2025, and as I mentioned, I'm writing a book, and I wouldn't wish the misery of writing a book on my worst enemy. It's hard work. I think that's why a lot of writers became alcoholics, drug addicts, and committed suicide. It's just hard. All right, enough complaining. I had to share something with you, and here's the point. So this was going to be a book, and still will be a book about what's called extreme autism, and this is the part of the autistic spectrum that is never reported by the news media. There are no books about it. There's no media coverage of it. And when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Mentioned its existence, the usual suspects of deranged social media paid trolls attacked him. Well, the fact is there is a disorder called extreme autism, and it's horrible. It's suffering for the children and suffering for the parents. So I'm writing what appears to be the only book for the public on this subject. And it's not studied by the CDC, by the way, so there aren't a whole lot of papers about it, but there are a whole lot of suffering children and suffering families. So anyway, I thought as part of the historical context, I needed to write about the history of vaccinations, right? Seems fair. So I ended up going down the rabbit hole of all rabbit holes. And let me see. This is going to be rough, guys, because I got to get back to work on the book. Um, I'm using this wonderful device called ChatGPT. I'm going to stop sharing right now, but I'll get back to it in a second. And those of you that read my book, Un Unraveling the COVID Con, I don't know. I don't even know the titles of my own books, but it's either the red book or the blue book. I gave the history of the mass vaccination of troops during World War One. And by amazing coincidence, the outbreak of the great flu of 1918 started in the United States in a military base where they were injecting this brand new vaccine into a whole bunch of young men. And the doctors were shocked at how these healthy young men would die in 24 to 48 hours. And then the next big outbreak, possibly the worst one in the United States, occurred at another military base near Boston. And those poor fellows were dying so fast, they literally couldn't handle the bodies. So did we have a great flu in 1918? Or did a rushed vaccine kill a whole bunch of young men? Good luck getting the CDC to look into it. So I knew about that, and that's in one of my books. But part of the sequence of how vaccination became normalized, because it wasn't normal for the public to be getting vaccines 100 years ago. It certainly wasn't normal for children to be getting up to 72 injections by the time they're 18. That wasn't normal. That's all been normalized. So I was tracing the history of the normalization. One of the big events in the normalization of mass vaccination of civilians. By the way, the introduction of mass vaccination started in the military. Every single guy that was drafted or volunteered to be part of the military during World War One had to get at least three shots of this brand new vaccine. Surprised they didn't kill or injure more people than they did because it was a rushed vaccine, as they all seem to be. Which is this, the sidebar is the disease worse, is the cure worse than the disease? But that's another issue. Um, so that was a big landmark event. And guess who paid for that? Was that a government program? Sort of. The military was involved in it. But guess who actually wrote the checks and provided the science? It was John D. Rockefeller and the Rockefeller Institute. Um, they fused themselves with the military on medical issues during World War One voluntarily and fronted all the money so that this vast experiment, mass vaccination of American troops during World War One could take place. That's how it happened. So the science of injected vaccinations started with a insane. amount of money behind it. Because people don't realize how rich the Rockefellers were. Like you could take Bill Gates, Elon Musk, excuse me, and Jeff Bezos, put all their money together and make it relative to what money was worth back then, and they're like little balls. And Rockefeller was like this. Rockefeller's assistants, his lieutenants, guys we've never even heard of, had money equivalent to Jeff Bezos. So anyway, the whole idea of vaccinating everybody for everything all the time, that came out of the gates fast with the equivalent of $1 billion, well, billions of dollars behind it. But that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about polio. This is unbelievable. And I'm going to have to check my notes to get the words correct. But this is history, guys. I'm not making anything up. All right, so the first outbreaks of polio ever recorded, and polio means a whole bunch of kids getting paralyzed and having respiratory depression. In other words, you can't breathe, all at the same time. The first time that was ever recorded in human history was in Massachusetts and Vermont. Rural areas, by the way. Rutland County, up there in Vermont. And what do we know about those parts of the world? Well, they were clean. They were prosperous. People were living pretty sanitary. But a new substance called lead arsenate was first recommended by the Department of Agriculture to spray on apple orchards. There was no warning about how to use it. It was literally, let me show you. It was literally put in like things, and you sprayed it. You walked, along the trees, spraying the trees, right? And lo and behold, later, it was discovered, and this again, my notes are all over the place, but believe me, it's here, guys. The notes, this is frustrating. It causes what they call flaccid paralysis. And the arsenic in it causes respiratory weakness. And basically, lead arsenate is neurotoxic. It's cumulative in the body, and it's capable of causing paralysis, motor weakness, and respiratory depression. Don't those sound like the symptoms of polio? Sure do to me. So let's get this straight. This is the history, guys. Not inventing this. Not fabricating it. Oops. Got to hit the right button. Not inventing it, not fabricating it, not stretching anything. The first time polio appeared, and polio is a whole bunch of kids, little kids, by the way. We'll talk about that in a second. Becoming paralyzed and losing the ability to breathe. First time that ever happened in human history was in rural areas in Massachusetts and Vermont, prosperous ones, where they got the brand new pesticide called lead arsenate. And nobody knew anything about it, and nobody was given any warnings, and it was sprayed on all the trees in the summertime, right? And the other thing we know about that outbreak was, when did it occur? In the summertime. And who did it occur among? Children 6 or under. Okay, who is most likely to be rolling around in the dirt, eating more fruit than they should, outdoors playing in the orchards, in the beautiful orchards, than children 6 and younger? Okay, what else do we know about children 6 and younger? They have a marked reduction in the ability to eliminate toxins from their bodies. Number one, they're small. So if they get the same amount of toxin as an adult, it's a lot bigger impact on them. But second, we all are born with we're not born with, by the way, I should make this clear. We have a nascent toxic removal system when we're born. It takes many years of childhood from birth to, interestingly enough, 6 or 7, to develop it fully. So we've got this neurotoxin. Now it's known as a neurotoxin, by the way. No conspiracy theory there. And it causes paralysis, and it causes depression of breathing. And they spray it all over the place. And the people that were affected were little kids. Well, we don't now. Science doesn't acknowledge any of this. Polio is caused by a virus. The virus spreads in mysterious ways. They still can't tell you how virus goes from person A to person B. They can't tell you that. That's science too. But it's very interesting that the first outbreak of polio occurred where they were spraying lead arsenate. And lead arsenate's side effects are paralysis and depressed breathing. And the victims just happened to be children of the age where they can't eliminate those toxins have a bigger impact and they can't eliminate them. That's the first polio outbreak recorded in human history, guys. There have always been children that have developed paralysis. These things happen, but an epidemic never before seen until by coincidence. This is total coincidence, guys. They just happened to be spraying a neurotoxin in the very regions where the first polio epidemic appeared. If that doesn't piss you off, pisses me off for two reasons. What they did to those little kids, and that it's 100 plus years later. And I had to figure this out myself in 2025. I never heard it anywhere else before. Maybe this knowledge exists. It's certainly not in the public realm. All right, so let's look at the next big polio outbreak. Well, first, in between this outbreak of childhood paralysis, there was a guy that discovered the polio virus. Here's how he discovered it. 1908. A child died. Paralysis was one of his symptoms. Material from his spinal cord after he passed was ground up and turned into a substance, and it was injected into the spines of two monkeys. Those monkeys developed paralysis and died. Guys, I am not kidding you. That is the scientific basis for the existence of the polio virus. That's how the whole polio story started. I'm not making it up. I can't make it up. You can verify. In fact, $10,000 cash on the table. Show me that I'm wrong. You can't. This is where polio as a science began. Now, injecting anything into any being's spinal cord could cause paralysis, correct? And death, correct? They were using 1908 standards. Not very high. They had 2 test animals. Not 200, not 2,000. And they didn't do, they should have done some with an injection of saline solution and other, they didn't do anything. But that was enough to declare that polio was real. Okay. Then retroactively, they went back and said, "Oh, these kids that we were spraying the lead arsenate, and suddenly these kids started dying. Well, paralysis. It must have been that virus that we found They didn't find shit in the spine of that child whose spinal cord material they injected into. They didn't find anything. They just said, well." We'll take it from his spine, we'll put it in the monkey's spine, and if they get paralysis, that's proof. That's proof of nothing. And why am I the one to tell you this? Why am I the one to be explaining this to the world? Maybe somebody else has done this, and if so, hats off to you. But I haven't heard of it. Then, as if this isn't lunatic enough, now 1918 comes along, and there's an epidemic of polio. Where is it? Well, it's limited. What is it limited to? It's limited to the slums of Brooklyn initially, to poor immigrants. And who are the victims? Again, it's children. Now, you got this disease. It appears in the beautiful bucolic countryside where the air is clean, water is clean. People are pretty prosperous in those days in the countryside. And their only problem was spraying lead arsenate. But now you're in tenements. Tenements have no fresh air. There's no sanitation, really. It's really poor. They're packed in. People are packed in like sardines. Streets are unpaved. It's a public health disaster waiting to happen. But what's the connection between these two locations? Obviously, there is none, except And let me get to my notes. And again, you're hearing this as fast as I found it. Oh God, will I ever? Everything's fun. It's a good system here, but it's not great. Carb, carbolic. Okay, what they were doing in the slums, because they had a theory. They had a theory that if they disinfected everything, all these, then there were diseases because you pack people together, they're malnourished, they have no fresh air, they're living 20 to a room, or believe me, it's not that much far from, I mean, it was bad. It was bad. What else is going on? Sanitation is bad. My great aunt told me, this is equivalent to my grandmother, but my great aunt told me that when she grew up in the tenements in New York City, there was no water in the apartments. Wrap your mind around that. No toilets, no sinks, no nothing. You wanted water, you went downstairs, you got some buckets, and you filled it from a pump in the backyard, and you carried the water upstairs. Are we surprised that people were coming down with all kinds of contagious diseases? We shouldn't be unless we're idiots. But so what the city fathers decided to do was they were going to take carbolic acid and they were going to spray it in the ventilation shafts of these tenements. They were going to spray it in the air. They were going to mop the floors and staircases and the whole business. Guess what carbolic acid turns out to be? They didn't know at the time. Let's see. Where do I find this thing? Okay. Come on, man. Okay. Let me see. Well, it's a neurotoxin. It's toxic. Okay. But it's actually, what does it do? Well, first of all, it can get into your skin. Obviously, you're going to breathe it. It can cause coughing, pulmonary edema, headaches, dizziness, nausea, indigestion. However, over time, so it can make you sick, just being exposed to it. But over time, what does it do to you? Injures your kidneys and livers. And you ready? It causes central nervous system depression. And if you think I'm making this up, it was sprayed and mopped onto walls, floors, staircases, and latrines. Why are they saying latrine? Why not? What's a latrine doing? There were no bathrooms, guys. There was no indoor plumbing in New York City in 1916. Certainly not in poor neighborhoods. Ventilation was poor. All right, so let's wind this back. Where did the second outbreak of polio take place in the United States? High profile. Took place not in the countryside, but in the slums where they were spraying carbolic acid everywhere. And what does carbolic acid do? You just saw it. It's a neurotoxin. Who got sick? Again, same group of people, 6 years and younger. Who's likely to be rolling around on the floor, crawling? Right? We all spend a year or so crawling. Who's likely to be exposed to the carbolic acid? Who is the least likely to be able to, kind of shed off its toxic effects? Children 6 and under. Do you see a pattern here? The two highest profile examples of the polio outbreak that took place in the United States that put the whole thing on the map. One occurred where they were spraying lead arsenate in the fruit trees, and the other occurred where they were spraying carbolic acid everywhere. Okay? And there's more. Everyone's heard FDR got polio. And, if you want a disease to be high profile, have the President of the United States have polio, have that disease, and everybody will know about it. He got his version of polio when he was, I think, 36, 39. They're now starting to think, gee, that wasn't polio, because it looks like it was something else. So FDR didn't even have polio. All right, so and this is just This is just the beginning. We're not even getting to the 1950s when they put out contaminated polio vaccine and killed God knows and crippled God knows how many kids. I haven't gotten to that part yet. I'm going to dive into there today. And this was, by the way, this started. This is why writing. It's not. It's like I never, obviously only woman knows, only mother knows. I imagine it's something like giving birth, right? It is a miserable experience, but when the book's out, it's out, right? But right now, it's like, I really thought I was just going to write a paragraph or two, maybe three on polio, and now the whole day is dedicated to polio. And I'm discovering stuff that I've never heard about, and I'm confirming, all these different ways, and nobody is able to contradict the basic facts. So the whole reason we're all getting pushed to be vaccinated all the time, every day, if possible. I know I'm exaggerating, but not that much. Is because there once was a thing called polio caused by a virus, and the magic polio vaccine made it go away. Doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like a reduction of exposure to neurotoxins by children 0 to 6, birth to 6. That's what made all the symptoms that they call polio go away. So my mind's boggled. My mind's absolutely boggled. It'll be in the book. And by the way, if you think this is kind of shocking and amazing and astonishing, the book is just one episode after another. I can't find a single instance where anything that is accepted science in the vaccine world has anything other than roots based in total fraud bordering on madness. Okay? So now maybe they improved everything in the modern era. It doesn't look like that to me. In fact, it looks like they went from abysmal ignorance combined with fraud, heavy duty promotion, to now creating an infrastructure of coercion. I mean, that seems to be the only thing that's really changed from the early days. In the early days, they told us how great their science was and how amazing these vaccines were, and how they're just completely safe. And now that people aren't buying that, they're taking out the whip and using a more coercive approach. But in any event, again, I just want to emphasize that so far, and I didn't set out to do this. I was just trying to say, well, my question was, how did the idea that children should be injected 60 to 72 times, not counting the flu shot, between birth and 18, how did that even come to be? And so I went back to the beginning. Who came up with this idea of injecting people with anything in the first place? That's kind of new. Right? Who came up with the idea of injecting people as some kind of vaccination? I looked into that. That story doesn't carry water either. And then how did the normalization of vaccination? Hey, it's normal. Just roll up your sleeve. Hey, it's not pleasant, but everyone's got to do it. How did that come to be? And I'm looking for where the science got serious and real, and I'm up to polio, and I am not finding it. In fact, I'm finding the exact opposite. And again, these are not conspiracy theories. These are not twisted facts. This is the actual narrative of what actually happened. But the narrative of what actually happened to what people are being told is 10,000% different. So I know this will affect and offend and impact some people, but I'm not finding a whole lot of science in the world of vaccination. In fact, I'm finding a lot of fraud and a lot of abysmal ignorance. So that's what I'm finding. And on this polio thing, if you think you got 10 grand, I'll put my cash on the table. You put yours on the table. We will go to the accepted history. And the guy who's right scrapes the 20 off the table. I'm ready to do that right now. Anyone want to join me? You think you're wrong? You think I'm wrong? Fine. I'll go to the bank. I'll go through the hassle of getting the 10,000. You show up here. We'll get the Encyclopedia Britannica, we'll use the internet, we'll use whatever. And we'll see if any part of the polio narrative that I've given is wrong at all, right? I'll leave it at low bar. If I've missed one thing, you go home with the 20 grand. I guarantee no one's going to show up here. Certainly no scientist, and certainly no doctor. I don't want any lunatic showing up here, by the way. You got to prove your sanity somehow. But it's really amazing. These are the facts of history, unblemished, undistorted, untwisted. This is exactly how it went down. And again, I'm amazed. It's 2025. I'm not an ignorant person. I've read a couple of books about vaccine. God knows I've listened to a million podcasts from very well-funded anti-vaccine groups, and I'm not hearing any of this basic history. Now, maybe they've told it and I missed it, but maybe they're just not, I don't know what they're up to or what they're doing. But to me, once you hear this history, you're like, wait, okay, when did this start to get to be science? We know it's a multi-billion dollar industry, right? We know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. They make the stuff, they ship the stuff, they've got pediatricians injecting the stuff in kids. By the way, I did the math, and I've never seen this math, and again, I could be wrong, maybe somebody else has done the math. Wait till you see the math of how pediatricians make out by being part of the vaccination bandwagon. It is a very, very lucrative part of their practices. Very lucrative. And we'll have the numbers in the book. So the book is coming. I had this fantasy that I would actually finish the book. I write fast because there's a lot to do. And I thought I could write this basic thing that I wanted to write in 2 weeks. I know that sounds fast for a book, but a lot of people are just slackers. And it's obvious to me this book's not going to be done in 2 weeks. I'm still hoping by the end of June. But I'm now giving myself a little bit of breathing room because every time I lift a rock, I find something absolutely mind-boggling that requires more time than I expected. So bottom line, what I thought was going to be 3 paragraphs is going to be about 8 to 10 to 12 hours of just dealing with this one section. But polio, who knew? Who knew? So, hey, we get the news we deserve, don't we? Right? You subscribe to things. I'm sure you have an internet connection, cable bill, and everything. If you're inclined to support this work, please do, because I'm not getting paid. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.